Noon, and this is Thursday, July 16th, 2020, and welcome to this version of Think. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of current events. The resignation of New York Times editor Miss Bari Weiss was in the news this week. Um, she wrote a very eloquent six-page resignation letter, which can be found online. I've got a copy of it here. Uh, Basically, the letter outlines her tenure at the Times, how she was hired after the 2016 elections. The Times at that point, senior editor Dean Baquet felt that they needed to get a little bit of more of a centrist point of view on the pages. She was hired to do so. She elaborates how she brought in many authors who authored, many individuals who authored various pieces, which offered a counterpoint to some of the more liberal-leaning pieces that appeared in the paper. And she identified the progress as she went through what was a beautiful uh, honeymoon initial stage, and as the eventually her centrist views led to the evolution of a very, very toxic, uninviting, unwelcoming, and negative workplace for her to work within. Um, she said that, and I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from her letter because I think it's important. She says that my own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views. They have called me a Nazi and a racist. I have learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Several colleagues perceived to be friendly with me were badgered by coworkers, and my work and my character are opening the meme on company-wide Slack channels where masthead editors regularly weighed in. There were some coworkers insist I need to be rooted out of this company if this company is to truly be inclusive. How ironic. And while others post axe emojis next to my name, still other New York Times employees publicly smear me as a liar and a bigot on Twitter with no fear that harassing me would be met with appropriate action. They never are. Um, this is an example of what Miss Weiss states. This is what Miss Weiss states occurred during her tenure there, and I want to read another paragraph out of this letter, which I think really encapsulates the entire theme of the counterculture of this false narrative that you get on the liberal side about being open-minded and all-inclusive, empathetic, kind, considerate of all. Um, and these are her words again, but the lessons that ought to have followed the election, lessons about the importance of understanding other Americans, the necessity of resisting tribalism, and the centrality of the free exchange of ideas to a democratic society have not been learned. Instead, a new consensus has emerged in the press, and especially at this paper, she references the Times here, that truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job it is to inform everyone else. That's it in a microcosm. That's it in a nutshell. Um, you either agree with the liberals, at which point you are met with compassion, understanding, smiles, pats on the back, friendliness, told how intelligent you are, how well informed you are, how insightful you are, or you can voice a contrary point of view. And when you voice that contrary point of view, you are deplorable. You are ignorant. You are beneath. And that's exactly what happened to her. To even accentuate the point a little more, here's this centrist woman, female, not even a conservative centrist, as her colleagues will all tell you. And after this occurs, as she resigns, Jill Abramson, who was a senior editor, a New York Times editor previously, goes on Fox News and says the idea that the New York Times is edited, and this is in response to the resignation letter, the idea that the New York Times is edited by a cabal of left-wing journalists is not the truth. Um, she then goes on to call Miss Weiss a junior editor, so demeans her position, sort of to uh, bring her down a rung, which plays back into the previous narrative we discussed, um, all in an effort to qualify and quantify the position, her position, Ms. Abrams' position, the New York Times position. And this tells you exactly how the liberal mindset works. Now, my question is this. If this were a liberal journalist, female journalist, who was resigning from Fox News, One American News, and this story broke, what kind of coverage would MSNBC give it? What kind of coverage would CNN give it? Uh, where would this be? It would be front page on ABC Nightly News. It would be front page. And there would be demands for inquiries. In addition to that, in this anti-bullying and very warranted anti-bullying, by the way, mandate or new world, new wave that we're in, which I agree with. No room for bullying in this world. Here's a woman who claims she's being bullied, a female being bullied. No response, no support. I believe only Andrew Yang, that I've heard of, came out in any way, shape, or form and said that she needed to be respected for her views. And I believe there was another another employee of the Times, and the name escapes me, who also came out and supported her, a liberal. I believe it's an editor or a writer in the Times. But nonetheless, you don't hear anything on MSNBC. You don't hear anything on CNN. You don't hear anything. Okay? This is what is called selective, very selective uh, empathy, very selective willingness to accommodate opposing points of view. It doesn't happen unless they're talking on your side of the table. Um, and this is something that is very prevalent in the liberal side of the equation. So I thought it interesting. I'd like you to look up that article and maybe read it and see. Maybe ask questions. Why isn't anyone talking about this? Also in the news, in Brooklyn this week, on Wednesday, peaceful protest was put together by civic leaders, community leaders, um, clergy, rabbis, ministers, priests, um, black citizens for police reform, various groups gathered in Cadman Square, I believe it was, in Brooklyn, in order to gather and voice their concerns and their requests for a police reform and social justice. So peacefully asking, not for defunding police, but just reforms to make sure that things are done correctly, which I think we can all agree with is very, very admirable and something we all want. Um, they were met by resistance. They were met by a group that resorted to violence, and you can watch the videos on TV of a person, a man, with a stick or a metal pole or something, banging it on the heads of two police officers. Both were hospitalized, both police officers, attacked two police officers. various people were injured. There were 5 shootings in connected drive-bys, and someone from the violent side, the violent protesting side, the ones that implemented the use of violence, told CBS 2 News that the reason that they reacted and were there was because the original protesters were too sympathetic to the police. Too sympathetic to the police. So, again, this is what they call tolerance, as long as you agree with them. But if you're too sympathetic, if you're not in agreement with their cause, all bets are off. All bets are off, including violence. So that occurred this week. And again, something that you can easily look up and you can see. Final thought that I have for the day is, as I watch and I think back on these demands made by various politicians, all of them, I think, are Democrats, liberals, about taking down statues of historic American figures based on the past and what they did. And as I read more and more about certain politicians clamoring and bringing up repatriation and white remuneration for the damages and the harms done by slavery. 200 years, 150, 100 years, I don't know when the last slave was in this country, but Lincoln emancipated the slaves 150 years ago. The fact that is a viable option in the liberal mind, those demands, those monetary compensations, those penalties that they're asking for, based on an inheritance, a lineage, because there's no one alive today that owned a slave. Maybe great-grandfathers of people today owned slaves, or great-great-great-grandfathers. But I guess that inheritance down the line of what 100 years ago your forefathers did, you inherit that liability and it comes down the line. Then I want inheritance also for the following. Inheritance for the Democratic Party, okay, who from the Democratic Party was birthed the Dixiecrats, okay, 1948, by Strom Thurmond, faction that broke off part of the Democratic Party and were open supporters of segregation, open supporters of not providing civil rights to minorities, open supporters of Jim Crow laws, open supporters of the Ku Klux Klan, open supporters of lynchings, hangings, beatings, floggings, drownings, and murdering, open supporters. That inheritance then should be looked upon the same way as the inheritance that is being claimed against the distant heirs of people in this country who have a lineage back to slavery, owning slaves. We don't hear any of that. We don't hear any of that. Again, the hypocrisy of the liberal left is so evident that if we open our eyes and we listen to their own words and just study history, go back, and you will see that the mandate is not what is good for the people. It is what is good for the politician.